Title of the first section today is Factoring, Greatest, Common Factor. In this section we'll take problems and we'll factor the greatest common factor. First question is 2x plus 10. To factor the greatest common factor, you want to look at each term and divide out the biggest number or biggest factor that divides into both terms. Looking at the two numbers in both terms, we have a 2 and a 10. The biggest number that divides into 2 and also 10 would be 2. After finding the greatest common factor, we can open parentheses and the number 2 will divide out of each term. Dividing a 2 from 2x, the 2 would cancel or factor out, and we'll be left with a single x. Bringing the plus sign over, factoring out a 2 or dividing by 2, 10 divided by 2 would be 5. So our first answer, 2, and inside parentheses, x plus 5. Second question, 3y to the second power minus 10y. Again, factoring out the greatest common factor, also known as the GCF. Looking at the two numbers in this question, we have a 3 and a 10. There is no number besides 1 that divides into 3 and 10, but both terms have the same variable, both terms have a y, so we can factor out where the GCF would be y. Open parentheses, taking a y out from the first term, the 3 would remain the same. Y squared means we have two y's, so if we factor or divide out a single y, we'll be left with 3y for the first term. Minus sign would stay the same. And again, taking out a y or factoring a y, we'll be left with 10. So our final answer would be y, and in parentheses, 3y minus 10. Next question, 4x to the third power plus 24x squared minus 12x. This time we have a trinomial with three terms or three numbers. The greatest common factor again will be the biggest number or biggest term that divides into all three. Looking at the numbers first, we have a 4, 24, and negative 12. 2 divides into each of these, but the biggest number that divides into 4, 24, and 12 would be 4. And again, the greatest common factor is the biggest number that divides into all three. All three terms also have a x. If you have the same variable in all the terms, we can factor out that variable also. So the greatest common factor would be 4x. Completing the question, we'll divide each term by 4x. The 4's again would divide or cancel. X to the third power is 3x's. If we divide or take out the x, we'll be left with x squared. Bringing down the plus sign, 24 divided by 4 would be 6. X squared, taking the x out, we'll be left with 6x. The minus sign again comes down, and 12 divided by 4 would be 3, with the x's canceling or dividing out. So our final answer would be 4x, and in parentheses, x squared plus 6x minus 3. And last question for the section, 6 p to the 6th power plus 24 p to the 5th power plus 18 p to the 3rd power. Again, we have a trinomial with three numbers or three terms. To find the GCF or greatest common factor, looking at 6, 24, and 18, we want to find the biggest number that divides into all three. 2 divides into each of these. 3 also divides into each of these. But our biggest number that divides into all three would be 6. Each of them again have the same variable p, so we can take a p out. When all the terms have the same exponent, we want to take the lowest exponent, which is 3. So we can take 3 p's out or divide p to the third into each of them. So again, our greatest common factor is 6p to the third power, and completing the question, we'll divide each one by 6p to the third. The 6's again will cancel. Taking 3 p's out from p to the 6, we'll be left with p to the third power, plus 24 divided by 6 will be 4. P to the fifth divided by p to the third will be p squared, or p to the second power, plus 18 divided by 6 would be 3. And the p to the thirds would divide or cancel out. So our final answer, 6p to the third power, and inside parentheses, p to the third plus 4p squared plus 3. Title of the last section today is Simplify. Each expression and write in standard form. In this section, we'll simplify algebraic expressions and write in standard form, which, if you remember, standard form is ordered from highest exponents to lowest exponents. First question, and only question for the section, y, and in parentheses, y plus 3, minus 5y, and in parentheses, y minus 2. To simplify, we can first get rid of the parentheses. If you remember using distributive property, we can multiply the term outside times both the terms inside the parentheses. Since we have 2 parentheses, then we'll use the distributive property twice. Multiplying the first terms, y times y would be y squared, and y times a positive 3 would be positive 3y, or plus 3y. Multiplying the second parentheses, we're going to multiply each term by negative 5y. So negative 5y times y, the negative 5 would stay the same, and y times y would be y squared. Negative 5 times a negative 2. Negative times a negative would be a positive. Multiplying the numbers, 5 times 2 would be 10, and the y would stay the same. Simplifying, we can combine like terms. When we're adding or subtracting like terms, we have to have the same variable and same exponent. So the y squareds we can put together. Y squared minus 5y squared would be the same as 1 minus 5, which would be negative 4. Subtracting 5 minus 1, the 5 is bigger, which would be negative 4, and the y squared would stay the same. And also the y's we can combine. 3y with a positive 10y. 3y plus 10y would be 13y. After simplifying, double check that our answer is in standard form. We have the highest exponents to the lowest exponents. So our final answer would be negative 4y squared plus 13y.